accession. But is the European Union accession process an exercise in democracy? I'm not so sure. It's a harmonization process. It is, to be sure, a process in which people are expected to embrace certain democratic values of human rights. But in terms of, those are outcomes, but in terms of process, if you go to Parliament here, you will say, gee, we really would have liked to have had a public hearing on this piece of legislation, but we couldn't because we needed to pass it immediately so that we could show Europe that we were serious when it comes to European Union accession. The government introduced a bill. It may have been a good bill, or it may have had problems. Was there an opportunity for people to participate in shaping that legislation? No. Why? Because there was the need, as understood, to get the law passed fast, to harmonize. So, at times, at moments, there can be a cross-purpose. European Union accession and democratization, I think, go hand in hand, but as a matter of outcome. But as a matter of process, when you're looking to make the political process more open and transparent, sometimes there's tension. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. Not necessarily solve it, but to acknowledge that. We're the people in NDI who are going to stand up for process. We're the people who are going to say, can't you take a few extra days and see if we can hold a public hearing, because there might be people out there that want to speak about environmental law and legislation, and it would be good to hear what they have to say, because maybe they're living next to a lake that's been poisoned, or maybe their children are getting sick and we don't quite know why, or maybe because they're concerned about air pollution or car pollution for all the traffic jams that are going on around Pristina and the air that they're breathing as a result. It speaks to the quality of the political process and the degree to which that process is reflecting public will, public interest, the degree to which one can say, you know, we have a democratic process going on. Okay, I think I will stop there, and hopefully some of these points have made some sense. And I'm very happy to take some questions from you all.
Thank you, Rob, for your great presentation, of course, as always. The reason why we want to talk about this process, because again, we go around and we always come to Kosovo. Of course, the international community, as I said, plays a very, very crucial role here, maybe too much of a role here. Look forward. But let's take elections as one of the foundations of democracy. I mean, a lot of political theories say that elections are really the core of the democratic system and everything. We have had several elections in Kosovo since 1999. How much influence did the international community have in these elections? Because we behind the doors know that at some point we got some political parties in power that were more favorable for different situations. But those elections have been always announced by the international community to be fair, best election in the region. But the first time that Kosovo organizes elections, we had a lot of problems. I mean, the same people voted, the same people went to elections, the same political parties and everything, you know, but did we have the very same problems even before, when the OSCE really oversaw the elections or other organizations, but they were really maybe covered just to make their point or maybe achieve their goals?
This is an area where I think, and I'm going to try to speak generically. I don't want to speak uniquely about Kosovo, although I think it's fed by the last 10 years in Kosovo. Sometimes, when one looks at outcomes desired, it's about trying to move things forward. It's about trying to achieve a sense of stability. It's about getting to the next stage. And sometimes, those times rather, tend to occur, I think, in societies that are coming out of conflict. And where the international community has a fairly distinct interest in allowing for a democratic exercise to take place, but not such that it derails whatever stabilization process might be going on. And so I think it is the case flatly that the international community took the lead role in elections a decade ago, and we were around for those first elections, both local and parliamentary, and participated as NDI in subsequent elections. And so I would offer as impression, not certainly as fact, that stability was seen to be a good outcome, and not necessarily maybe a strong democratic exercise, perhaps not hoped for, but maybe not the #1 priority. Let's call them priorities. I think that's a better way of describing it. Elections are two things in many respects. They are, well, they're fundamentally a democratic exercise to have people choose their government. You're the client, and you're hiring a consultant to serve you. That's what the government is. There has to be, I think, a mentality change ultimately for people to recognize that they don't serve the government serves them. It's your government, it's your parliament. You're the one who hire the people to occupy it, they serve you. That's essentially the premise. It's a political exercise in democracy. The other thing, of course, elections are administrative things. They require voter lists, they require a central election commission, they require ballots, they require election systems, and so they can be very complicated as well on that side. Right now, I think Kosovo is challenged on both those elements because Kosovo is trying to establish sufficiency in running elections. That is administrative. That is about the CEC having the administrative competencies to run an election, and it is an extremely complicated process. It is about having a proper dispute and resolution mechanism, whether built into the Central Election Commission or housed in the judiciary, that is itself clear, that is itself open, transparent, and depoliticized. It's about a lot of things. It's certainly about voter registration, which I think is a challenge in Kosovo. About having a census. It's about how internally displaced people are voting. And it is about determining what kind of election system do you want. Do you want to keep a single election district? That provides for stability, that provides for unity, that provides for a certain reassurance when part of the country, as we know, is not participating in Kosovo's political system. But that will render outcomes that may speak to stability, but they may not favor democracy. Who's your MP? Who is your member of parliament? You hired these people, you put them in parliament, you voted for them. Who are they? Who do you go to? Who represents you? I'm not sure. I'm not sure right now. Does that mean you should have a single member district? Maybe not. Maybe you also have an interest in making sure that a sufficient number of people and constituencies and minority groups are represented in your system. And so keeping things proportional and not just single member, that's an interest. What I would say as a democracy organization, you in Kosovo need to have a public discourse on that. Albania changed its election system 2 years ago. That's fine. Did they ever have a public hearing? No. Did civil society participate in deciding or contributing ideas to what that election system should be? No. Did the Democratic Party and the Socialist Party go behind closed doors and kind of figure out what they thought would be good? Yep. Was that democratic? No. That's for the Albanians to decide. That's for you to decide. So again, no particular model, process, yes. There are things that need to be done, and I hope the problem with elections now is you're a year away from elections. These things need to be decided now because you can't just change up the system 3 months before the elections. They're too complicated, and people need to know what